Something to think about. Has technology introduced new challenges in the way we communicate with each other and engage in discourse? How has social media affected the way we communicate with each other? Do we fully understand each other when we text messages back and forth? We just mentioned that body language plays a crucial role in the way we talk to each other, the way we communicate with each other. Without body language and other cues, including tonal changes, how do we get across the right meaning when we communicate through these various forms of technology? According to a recent study, the intended tone of an email message is perceived correctly only 56% of the time. That means all the other times, the tone of the email message is incorrectly understood. It just doesn't come across. If you go on Facebook and you see all these political debates that keep on going on, it seems like everyone wants to engage in political conversations on social media. Often it seems like it results into a nasty exchange of name calling and ad hominem attacks. How is this affecting our society and the exchange of ideas? Is removing the organic element, our body language, the context of our words that is placed within the tones that we use and our facial expressions and gestures, causing something to be lost when we communicate through social media and technology? It's something to think about. Anthropologists are currently looking at this, seeing how changes in technology affect the way we communicate and understand each other, and what does that mean in terms of the broader culture of society. Again, gestures are facial expressions and body postures, emotions that convey intended as well as subconscious messages. The study of gestures fall under the study of nonverbal signs known as kinesics. Kinesics is essentially body language, such as gestures, body position and movement, facial expressions, and eye contact. Proxemics, on the other hand, is the study of social use of space, for example, personal space. Personal space depends on a number of factors, such as one's relative status in society, or one's relative status towards another person, gender and age, an attitude that you have towards another person, one's social status, as well as different cultural practices and beliefs. When we think about personal space or the use of space, it's important to understand the context. There are times when you invade someone's personal space, it comes off as a threat. Whereas there are other times when you invade someone's personal space, it may indicate that you desire that person or wish to be in a closer relationship with that person. All species communicate. However, there are generally two primary communication systems. There are closed systems and open systems. In closed systems, new meanings or messages cannot be created, whereas in open systems, new meanings and messages are easily created. An example of an open system would be human communication. All species, as I said, have a form of communication. And all their signs that they give in this form of communication have a useful purpose. But not all species both send and receive messages. The interchangeability, the ability to both send and receive messages, is a feature of human communication and some other species, such as maybe chimpanzees and other primates. What is particularly distinct to humans is this concept of displacement in productivity and creativity. Displacement basically means that our language is able to transcend the present. We could talk about the future, we could talk about the past, we could talk about altered states. With regard to productivity and creativity, humans have the ability to express ideas that never have been expressed before. This is not particularly found in other species, not even with regard to chimpanzees and primates and orangutan, and basically other primates, such as chimpanzees, orangutans, and gorillas and bonobos. All human languages change over time, and all cultures have language. And all languages are rule driven. There are no primitive languages. And languages are symbolic in nature and have a basic word order. They have grammatical categories like nouns and verbs. There are discrete sounds such as vowels and consonants. And there's a duality of patterning that can be found in all languages. When studying languages, it's important to understand the basic units or the building blocks that make up a language, the language structure. These are phonemes, morphemes, and syntax, for example. A phoneme is a minimal unit of sound that can make a difference in the meaning of a word if it is substituted for another sound. They are different for each language. There are about 100 phonemes. English uses close to 40 phonemes, 11 vowels depending on the dialect. A morpheme, on the other hand, is a minimal unit of meaning in a language and cannot be broken down into smaller units that still relate to the original meaning. In other words, any of the minimal grammatical units of a language that cannot be divided into smaller grammatical parts. They could be bounded or unbounded. A bounded morpheme, for example, would be such as as in rearrange. Bounded morphemes may be added to the beginning or end of a word. When it's an example of it being added to the end of the word is when you make a word plural, for example. An unbounded morpheme is a word that can stand alone. Syntax are the rules that govern word order and the rules that direct the use of certain morphemes that perform grammatical function. There are about 6,000 to 7,000 languages. Language generally is a method of human communication. It can be either spoken or written, and it involves the use of words in a structured and conventional way. Dialect, on the other hand, is a subordinate variety of a language, and there's a common assumption that you can understand someone of a different dialect of the same language. Essentially, a dialect is a particular form of a language which is unique to a specific region or a social group. There is a lot of language variation. There's variation within one language. And language variation can depend on a number of factors. For example, settlement patterns can affect language variation, as well as migration routes. Geographical factors, such as whether you live on an island society, which makes you isolated and insular, or the environment in which you live in, or the distance you are from another society or another culture, one's landscape, all affect different interactions and movement of people between different cultures and societies, affecting language, causing language variation. Language variation can also depend on language contact, such as mutual borrowing of vocabulary or syntax or pronunciation of words. And this can be all brought about through things like war or conquest or trade. Language variation could also depend on social class or gender identity. It could be regional and based on occupation. There's language variation that is generational or specific to special interest groups. All these factors are fluid and do not happen in isolation. They all play together in creating language variation. And when that happens within a language, it usually creates variations that we see as dialects. In this particular diagram, or this picture, it gives a general overview of the various dialects found in America. This picture comes from the Washington Post. An article titled, "What Dialect Do You Speak? A Map of American English" by Reed Wilson. I thought it'd be interesting to show you the various dialects that could be found in America and the location of those dialects. I'll be providing a link to the Washington Post article immediately after this short video.